Air Transat Flight 236 was making its regular journey from Toronto, Canada, to Lisbon, Portugal. The massive Airbus A330 glided silently through the night sky, 39,000 feet above the vast and dark Atlantic Ocean. Everything seemed calm and ordinary. The cockpit lights glowed softly, and the sky outside was peaceful. For Captain Robert Pichet and First Officer Dirk de Jager, it was just another routine long-haul flight. They had done this route many times before, and nothing appeared unusual. But hidden deep within the aircraft systems, something was quietly going wrong, something that would soon turn this peaceful flight into one of the most dramatic survival stories in aviation history. Milky Way: A Calm Beginning. Earlier that evening, at Toronto Pearson International Airport, preparations were underway for the flight to Lisbon. The Airbus A330 had been loaded with 48 metric tons of fuel, enough for the entire 7-hour journey. It was around 9 p.m. local time when boarding began. A total of 293 passengers and 13 crew members were on board. Captain Robert Pichet, aged 48, was a veteran pilot with over 16,000 flight hours. His co-pilot, 28-year-old First Officer Dirk de Jager, was young but highly skilled, with more than 5,000 flight hours under his belt, including 400 on the A330. Their aircraft was relatively new, just 2 years old, and fitted with advanced safety and navigation systems. With such a capable crew and a modern plane, no one could have predicted what was about to unfold. After final checks were completed, the engines roared to life. The aircraft taxied smoothly down the runway and lifted gracefully into the night sky. Once it reached cruising altitude, the autopilot took control. The pilots monitored their instruments, spoke with air traffic controllers, and enjoyed a calm, uneventful flight. Hours passed without incident. The passengers were asleep, the cabin was quiet, and the plane drifted over the middle of the Atlantic, the most remote stretch of ocean between North America and Europe. But soon, that silence would be broken. Warning the first sign of trouble at around 1 a.m., Captain Pichet noticed something odd on the instrument panel. The right engine, engine number 2, was showing unusual readings. The oil pressure was high, but the oil quantity and temperature were low. That combination didn't make sense. Both pilots exchanged confused looks. They had never encountered these specific readings before. They checked their manuals for guidance, but there was no procedure for this kind of problem. Unsure of what to do, they contacted Air Transat's maintenance center in Canada for assistance. The ground team analyzed the data but couldn't find any explanation either. They advised the crew to continue monitoring the readings carefully. For the moment, the aircraft seemed fine, both engines were running smoothly, and the fuel indicators looked normal. The pilots concluded it might just be a sensor malfunction. But only 30 minutes later, another alert appeared, and this time, it was serious. Fuel pump. The fuel mystery begins. The fuel gauges showed that the right tank was draining faster than the left. At first, this didn't cause alarm. Fuel imbalance was a common issue that could be fixed mid-flight. Captain Pichet opened the crossfeed valve, allowing fuel to transfer from the left tank to the right tank. The levels balanced out again, and for a moment, everything seemed under control. But 10 minutes later, the warning lights came back, brighter and louder. The right tank was emptying even faster, and now the total fuel left on board was dangerously low. This was no longer a simple imbalance, they were losing fuel rapidly. The pilots immediately realized the seriousness of the situation. They checked their charts and identified the nearest airport, Lajes Field, on the Azores Islands. It was the only place in range, located hundreds of kilometers away in the middle of the Atlantic. They contacted Santa Maria Air Traffic Control, declared an emergency, and began diverting toward the Azores. But deep down, both pilots knew they might not even make it that far. At that point, only about 7 tons of fuel remained, roughly 6% of the full capacity. And the fuel was vanishing fast. running a race against time. To confirm a fuel leak, the captain asked the cabin crew to look through the windows for any signs of fuel spraying from the wings. But the night was pitch black, and nothing could be seen. Still, the fuel readings continued to drop. Within minutes, another ton had disappeared. It was now clear, a massive fuel leak was draining the plane. The pilots calculated that they had less than 25 minutes before both engines would stop. They spoke again with maintenance control, who suggested descending to 20,000 feet to check for leaks more clearly. But Captain Pichet refused. He knew descending would reduce the potential gliding distance if the engines failed. Staying high at 39,000 feet gave them the best chance to reach land. Then, alarms blared inside the cockpit. A fire warning appeared for the right engine. The crew quickly followed emergency procedures and shut it down. Now, Flight 236 was flying on only one engine. Panic rippled through the passengers as oxygen masks dangled and the aircraft began to descend. But the worst was yet to come. Complete engine failure on the ground, emergency crews on Turkire Island prepared for impact. Rescue trucks and boats lined the coast, waiting for a possible ditching in the ocean. The Airbus was still 240 kilometers away from the runway and had less than 600 kilograms of fuel left. Then, the unimaginable happened, the remaining left engine suddenly stopped. The aircraft had lost all power. In an instant, the A330 turned into a 200-ton glider. The cockpit went dark. Without engines, the electrical systems failed, leaving only a few instruments powered by a small backup turbine, known as the ram air turbine, RAT. At 30,000 feet and descending fast, Captain Pichet faced an impossible choice: try to glide to land, or prepare to ditch in the freezing Atlantic waters. The odds were against them. Wave the longest glide in aviation history inside the aircraft, silence replaced the roar of the engines. All that could be heard was the sound of rushing wind outside the fuselage. The cabin crew instructed passengers to fasten their seatbelts and prepare for a possible ocean landing. Some prayed. Others held hands in silence. The aircraft was descending at about 2,000 feet per minute. They had roughly 15 minutes to make landfall, or perish at sea. As the Azores came into sight, the aircraft was still too high to land. To lose altitude safely, Captain Pichet performed a full 360-degree turn over the ocean. After completing the turn, the plane dropped to around 5,000 feet, still a little high, but aligned with the runway. He then executed a series of S-shaped turns, carefully controlling their descent using only gravity and precision. There was no thrust, no engine power, and no room for error. Airplane arrival, the miracle landing. Finally, the runway lights of Lajes Field appeared in the distance. Captain Pichet lined up the aircraft perfectly and guided it toward the ground. The landing was hard. The plane hit the runway and bounced once before slamming down again. 8 of the 12 tires burst instantly, and sparks shot from the landing gear. But somehow, the pilots kept control. The Airbus skidded for hundreds of meters before coming to a complete stop. Fire crews rushed in, extinguishing small flames near the landing gear. Amazingly, all 306 people on board survived. Not a single life was lost. Air Transat Flight 236 had glided over 120 kilometers without engines, the longest unpowered glide ever recorded by a commercial jetliner. The shocking discovery. Investigators later uncovered the shocking cause of the incident. Before takeoff, a hydraulic part had been replaced on the right engine. However, the replacement part was from a different aircraft model. The vibration from the engine caused the mismatched part to rupture a fuel line, leading to the massive leak. After this event, Airbus redesigned the A330's warning systems to detect abnormal fuel loss immediately, ensuring such a situation would never happen again. Sports Medal Aviation Heroes. Captain Robert Pichet and First Officer Dirk de Jager were praised worldwide for their skill, calmness, and teamwork. They turned a doomed flight into one of the greatest feats of airmanship ever recorded. Both pilots received the Superior Airmanship Award for safely landing the powerless Airbus A330. Their actions that night became a symbol of courage, precision, and hope. Flight 236, once destined to vanish into the Atlantic, became known forever as the miracle over the ocean. And that is how two pilots, hundreds of lives, and one silent aircraft defied the impossible, and made aviation history.